Hello everyone, I hope you all are doing well. This side Priya Bhatia. And in this particular video, we will be discussing about, pruning techniques in decision tree. Now, what is this pruning is all about? We will discuss, but majorly, if you remember, in our previous videos, we have talked about decision trees in a very detail, right? We have seen that how basically decision nodes will be created, how basically the split will happen. We have talked about two impurity measures in our discussion. One is about the Gini index, and second one is about the entropy. I hope that whatever discussion we have made so far and whatever things we have learned so far about the differences between these two impurity measures, that is pretty much clear to everyone. Then only you will be able to understand the upcoming videos regarding the decision tree part. Now, one of the major issue in this decision tree creation part is the overfitting. And I hope that in the previous videos itself, you must have understood the concept of overfitting. But let me recap that. What is overfitting if someone will ask you? Simple thing is that at the time of training, you are feeling or you are having a numbers in which you are seeing that accuracy metrics is very great. Means the error term is very, very low. You are getting a great accuracy, you are getting a very low error, but at the time of testing part per se, whenever a new test set will come into picture, you are observing that there is an abrupt change in the error value. The error shoots up, error value is very, very high, right? In other words, you are observing that in the testing part per se, the accuracy is very, very low. And that is something which troubles the entire ecosystem of decision tree. And we have to avoid that, right? We don't want that this is the situation which will happen. But the bad thing is in decision trees, this is something which is very widely happened until or unless we will not take care of that. So today in this session, we will try to discuss that how basically we can handle that kind of scenarios. How basically we can handle that overfitting in decision trees. And that is where this pruning term came into picture. For example, in a gardening, we usually try to see that gardeners try to do the pruning of that area as so that the new flowers will come up, right? There will be no weeds there. Similar to that, you can understand that this is where the term came into picture. In decision tree also, we will try to create that depthness into account, and we will try to take that, okay, we will try to shorten down the depthness so that we will able to remove that leaf node which are not required or which are not that much significant to make the predictions. Now, how will this be done? How many types of pruning techniques that we have? All these discussions we will do in this session. So let's get started and we'll try to understand with the visual representation that how basically the pruning will be done. So without wasting any time, let's get started. So now, as I told you that in a decision tree, there is a major problem which is about overfitting, right? And I have already explained that overfitting is something in which you can consider that at the time of training this algorithm or the model data modeling when you are doing with the help of decision tree, you will be able to get a better accuracy. You will be able to get that better classification report, let's assume. And when that particular model is encountered with a new test set, at that point of time, you will be observing that, automatically there is a you can say downgrade in terms of accuracy, or you can say the error is automatically increasing very, very huge. That is something which is a very dangerous situation for any of the modeling part, and we really don't want this kind of situation to happen, right? Because you can understand that it will take too much resources in order to train the models, and then this kind of scenarios might happen. So we have to make sure that this scenario will not happen. Now, when we are talking about this pruning, what usually happens is, I'll talk about this graph which is you are seeing here, but later on let's try to first of all understand the concept of pruning itself. So whenever I'm saying that we have something called as pruning, first of all you have to understand that this pruning concept came into picture just to avoid that overfitting part. So this concept came into picture to avoid the overfitting to a certain extent, you can say. Okay, so what usually happens here, for example, let's say with the help of that Gini index or with the help of that entropy measure, you will be able to create a decision nodes, and here you will be having some decision nodes, and after that you all know that at the end what usually happens is you will be having something called as a leaf node, right, at the very end. So let's assume that you are trying to create a decision tree, and that is where you will be having a final, you can say, leaf node which is available at the very end. Let's assume, we are just assuming all these things, right? So let's assume that we will be having this kind of a tree where every particular node is a decision node, you can say decision DN. Let me write it like that. DN indicates nothing but, you can say, decision node, right? And you all know that at the very end, whenever we are talking about a leaf node, let's assume that we are trying to do a classification problem, and we are trying to predict that whether the label will be classified as, let's say, yes or no. Okay, whatever problem you can consider. Let's say you're considering the diabetes problem itself. So we are trying to create a decision tree depending upon the patient's factors. At the very end, let's say my model is predicting to me that whether the patient will be having outcome as 0 or 1. 0 or 1, let's assume, or 1, and let's say you will be having here decision node itself, right? There will be decision node, there will be a decision node, and here also there will be a decision node. Only we know at the very end there will be a, you can say, final labels or final output that we have, right? This is how basically we can create a tree. Now you can understand that if, let's say, you will be having too many records and too many features are available, in that case what will happen? Your depth of decision tree will be very, very high, very, very huge. So this is something that we call as a decision tree. This is something which we call as a decision tree. And you all know that at any point of time, when we will be having multiple factors, multiple features, in that case, what is the meaning of a depth? You can say this is level number 0 in a tree, this is level number 1, right? This is something which is level number 2, and this is something which is level number 3. Let's assume, right? This is something which we call as the levels in a tree. Those who are from DSA based background, they already know all these stuffs. So if I'll ask you what is the depth of my tree, you can say that it will be, consider it as a height only 4, right? So first height, second, third, and fourth. Now, if you will be having so many features, you can consider that this height can increase until a certain extent, maybe 10, 11, 12, 14, 15, and so on. Now, what will happen is, let's say, higher the depth part. So that much time your model will take in order to make the predictions. I hope you can understand. And let's assume that at any point of time, let's say in this decision node itself, you are getting the result as maybe 9 yes or 9 indicators are there that your data belongs to one class, and let's say 2 indicators are there that the data belongs to 0 class. And that is where you will get the assurity that your data belongs to 0 class, and here your data belongs to 1 class, right? This is where you will say at the very end of the leaf node that the Gini index will be 0, impurity will be 0, your data is very pure. But the question is that, is there a need to go till the end? Is there a need to create this level of nodes? I'm giving you just example. You can say no, it might not be the case. Why? Because if, let's say, higher samples or higher records belong to one label, and there are very low number of records which belong to 0 label, so why there is a need even to create a separate category of 0 and 1? So we are trying to increase the length or increase the depth somehow. There is no need for that, because in this itself node, our model will be able to understand that the probability of having the one label is very, very high as comparable to the probability of 0, because it is 1 is 9 by 11 and 2 is 2 by 11, right? So 9 by 11 is definitely much higher as comparable to 2 by 11. So why to create an extra node? Now you will ask me that, Priya, how will it impact if we will create a one extra node? It impacts. You can consider that if you will be having a huge amount of data where the depth is too much high, in that case, when your model is searching and going towards this leaf node, even the smaller one depth also will make a lot of difference in your model in terms of getting the prediction to be done, right? This is where the concept of pruning comes into picture. We have two concepts here in pruning. One is called as, you will heard this name as post pruning. Another one is called as pre-pruning. So by name itself, you will be able to understand when we are saying post pruning, it simply indicates that first of all, our model will be able to create the entire decision tree. And after that, it will give a thought that which particular node we can remove, which particular depth we can, make aside, which doesn't make much significant difference in order to make the predictions. So in the post pruning, what is happening is once your decision tree is created, once your decision tree is, you can say created entirely, and then pruning process starts. Then you can say pruning process starts, where your model will give a thought that okay, at any stage can I remove any depth, can I remove any leaf. There are multiple factors we have in the parameters itself. I will show you today. In the pre-pruning, what will happen is, at the time of decision tree creation itself, at the time of, you can consider decision tree creation itself, decision tree, you can say creation itself, you can consider that at that phase itself, when your decision tree is being created, at the time of DT creation itself, your model will be able to understand, or your model will be able to start the pruning. Means it will give a thought that how much depthness I will make sure my model will be able to get, so that it will be able to give me a better prediction, and it won't take too much time in order to make the results. So this is what we call as a pruning. I hope it is clear to everyone. Now you can ask me one question, that Priya, how is this possible, right? The simple answer is, if you will go to the documentation of decision tree classifier or decision tree regressor, as I told you, the only difference between these two stuffs is that in decision tree regressor, you will observe that at the leaf node, you will be having a continuous values instead of having exact labels, which we have in a decision tree classifier. Another thing is, in that scenario, you will always focus on reducing the mean squared error or root mean squared error, because the matrix is entirely different. So that is the two differences which you have to make sure will happen when your model is trying to create a decision tree for regression problem itself. As we have seen that this decision tree is basically helpful for both the tasks, whether it's a classification task or it's a regression based task. Now you can understand here that in this documentation, we will be having few variables, or you can say hyperparameters. For example, max underscore depth, min underscore samples underscore split, min underscore samples underscore leaf. So these things are basically responsible for the pruning per se, right? If let's say by default it is defined as none, but if I just feed some number in this particular place, so what will happen is, at the time of the decision tree creation itself, in the pre-pruning phase itself, your model will try to understand that okay, I can go until this much depth. Now you can ask me a question that, Priya, how can I write some number, right? That's a good question, that how can we write, how we will be able to get an idea that okay, this is the optimal number which we can write here. So for that, there is a technique of hyperparameter tuning which come into picture. In the later part of our videos, you will see that we have a module in this course by the name of hyperparameter tuning, where we have two basic techniques. One is called as grid search CV, another one is called as randomized search CV. So what is happening in grid search CV is, we will try to give some numbers which we feel can be the best optimal, or we will provide some range, you can say, and internally your model will try to see that in which particular number your model fits the best. So this can happen, right, with the help of this hyperparameter tuning concept. So in the upcoming phase of the sessions, I will show you all those things which I'm talking about. So in terms of implementation per se, I believe this part is feasible with the help of that grid search CV or randomized search CV which I'm talking about. But these are the parameters which are responsible for the pruning per se. So it is very, very important for you to understand both of the aspects, which you can see here. The maximum depth of the tree, if none, the nodes are expanded until all leaves are pure, which we called as where the value of the Gini index is 0. I hope you know that. In the last session I have told you. So if I'll write some number, in that case it will prune at that stage itself. So all these things are very, very important to understand. I will again highly refer to everyone that please refer this documentation. For those people who are not aware, you can also refer the GitHub repository. So in this documentation itself, you will see on the extreme right, there is a GitHub repo link. If you just open it, you will be able to see the code files are also available. So how, when you are calling this decision tree, it is working internally inside the sklearn, you can go check it out. For example, in the ensemble, what techniques we have, right? There is a tree module. I hope you can see here. So in this tree, there is a techniques of decision trees and all those trees which we will talk about. Random forest is ensemble part, which will come under ensemble. So you can check out all the code files because you are calling the API. What is happening is internally already developers or researchers have written a code by which this decision tree is created, by which the models which you're calling is created, right? There will be a code files available. There will be a classes which will be available. So I would highly recommend to everyone, just in your documentation, please refer and explore this code files as well. In the upcoming part of the stage, I will also show you a few things which I feel is important. For example, if you will feel in the implementation per se, when we are calling from sklearn.metrics, so this is the folder which is internally being called. So whatever be the evaluation metric you are using, it is already available here, right? So for every particular folder, it is available. For example, clustering part, in future you will study data sets, usually we call from sklearn. So all these datasets files are available here, right? You can see it clearly. CSV files are there, which is by default available in sklearn. So that is where this import is happening. Obviously, it will be somewhere, right, via which you can access it. So it's an open source which everyone can access here from sklearn. That's the whole idea which I want to convey here. So this is the overall idea between post pruning, pre pruning, and what is the concept of pruning altogether. In interviews, it can be widely asked question, and please, I hope now it is clear to everyone that why it is important technique to understand the difference, or you can say limitation, of a decision tree. Now one important thing which you will observe, there is one great book by the name of Introduction to Machine Learning, sklearn scikit-learn, by the name of Oren. So you will see it's a author, Oren Giran. So you can see hands-on machine learning with scikit-learn, Keras, and TensorFlow. I will highly refer this particular book for the implementation per se, for the understanding per se. If you want to refer any book, please do refer that book. Now one important thing which you will be able to observe here, if I'll talk about the this particular graph which I have taken from that book itself, you will be able to observe that what is the problem, major issue behind decision tree is, apart from that overfitting which we are talking about, that at any point of time, if let's say you will be having a training data which is available with you, and if let's suppose you will be able to create, or your model will be easily able to create a linear decision boundary in that case. For example, you will be having this x1 image available with you. In this case, your model will be easily able to classify between this class A which we have and between this class B. Why? Because there is a linear boundary between these two structures. But at any point of time, if let's say you will try to make a variation of this given image, and let's say you want to convert that image or shift that image orientation to 45 degree. So what is happening is it will try to shift it down, but in this specific case, your decision tree will not work in the best case part, right? So your model is very, very sensitive for this, even the small variations in the training set. That's why that is the another limitation where you will observe that decision tree is not working perfectly. We have a techniques of data augmentation which you will deal in the future part of the sessions. In deep learning, in the images part, it is very widely used, where we just try to shift the orientations and try to get more training data. So what is happening is we need to have some model which is good with all the orientations that we have, right? That is where now in future sessions you will observe that we will be dealing with something called as ensemble techniques, where we will be having an bagging and boosting. One of the very widely used technique is random forest, which is, you can say, is a cumulative of decision trees. For example, in decision tree only single model is working. In random forest, you can consider that multiple models of decision trees are working cumulatively, and that is where we get the best approach. So in future, I'll talk about that in a separate video, and then you will get a better idea. But in the upcoming session, you will observe that we are discussing about the implementation of whatever things we have covered up in decision tree, because I think we have covered up a lot about the mathematical part, and actually it contains a lot of maths as well. This maths will really help you in order to understand the upcoming part of the algorithm as well, which is random forest. So I hope that until so far, whatever things I have covered up in this course is pretty much clear to everyone. Still, if you have any confusion, any doubt, please do reach out to me. I will for sure try to resolve it as soon as possible. Thank you so much, everyone. So now I hope that you will be able to understand the clear picture of overfitting and how we can handle that. This is one of the very widely asked interview question also. So please make sure that you should have that idea that how basically we will be able to handle that. What is the literal meaning of that? I will see you all in the upcoming session now, where we will do the hands-on implementation of decision tree. Bye bye everyone, and